what are some practices that our viewers can engage in to heal their own ancestral line, to marry their destiny, so to speak?
Well, I think that everyone, first and foremost, should find out what their heritage is. You can take these DNA tests nowadays. They're pretty simple. Find out what your heritage really and truly is and where those ancestral lands lie. If you can visit them, great. If not, you can certainly visit them through the shamanic journey. Go and meet your ancestors in the shamanic journey. It's not just a matter of, although this is lovely too, I mean, get pictures of your grandparents, your great-grandparents, as many of your ancestors as you can find, and put them on an altar or hang them up on a wall. Have a place in your home which is their place where you can honor them, and you can invoke them, you can talk to them, you can light candles, leave offerings. The ancestors, it was not their intention in many regards to leave the kind of legacies that they did. Sometimes it was unavoidable circumstances. Sometimes it was a series of poor decisions. But when I work with clients who are trying to maybe resolve something with a relative that has passed on, and the helping spirits will oftentimes work in trying to heal the regret that one who has passed over still carries. And they will say to that soul, what did you want to leave? What was the legacy that you would have wanted to leave behind? Because we all want to make our mark on the world. We all want to leave the world better than we found it. And our ancestors are no different. And so even if their life was tragic, or even if their life, in terms of the way the world might look at it, they might term it a failure, there is still something within them that is of value, that is maybe an untapped, unused, unlived gift or talent that they can pass on, a strength, a virtue. I think that it's very healthful to tell stories about our ancestors, whatever stories we do know, even if it only goes back to our grandparents, to reveal to the world who these people were, to give them a kind of continued life, to examine the things that were important to them, and to aim to bring those things into our own life. Even if it's a simple thing. I remember my brother passed away when I was in my late 30s, and he loved baseball. And I was never a baseball fan, but I thought, well, I can watch some baseball games for Donnie. I can do that. And I actually became a big baseball fan. And it was just at the time when my two sons were kind of coming up through Little League. So it all worked out. We would all sit and watch baseball together. I mean, that's just a small example of some of the things that you can do. I found out that my paternal grandmother, who I never met, was a healer. And I realized that I had gotten, kind of the call that I answered in my own healing work had come through her. And I was so honored to be able to pick up that baton from her. So the more research that we can do into our ancestors, and we can, even through the shamanic journey, we can meet and talk with ancestors that were dead long before we were born. And we can find out what was of interest to them, and what their life was like, and what they cared about. And we can honor that in the living of our own life. Mm-hmm. So we have to really remember this, as much as we understand and we kind of live under the yoke of the trauma and the illnesses, the failures, the regrets that our ancestors experienced and left as a legacy. there is also a huge cache and wealth of strength and virtue and talent and experience, positive experience, that we can also draw on. That is also there for the taking. And certainly in the ways in which we undertake to live our lives in a better way. We can call on them to stand behind us, to lend their strength to us and their wisdom to us. The ancients always called on the ancestors. That's a practice in every shamanic tradition that I know. You honored the ancestors. You went to them for wisdom. You went to them for advice and counsel. And usually there's a festival or a holiday at some particular time of the year. In the Celtic tradition, it's Samhain, which is November 1st. And that was when the ancestors were classically and typically honored. And it was a matter of naming the dead and reminding ourselves of who these individuals were, sometimes telling stories about them, sometimes having a meal in which you put out all the food that was their favorite food and giving them a place at the table. There's lots and lots of ways in which we can honor our ancestors. What I try to do in my own life, I make a trip either to Scotland or Ireland every year. I sort of made a vow to myself about 5 years ago that I was going to make that happen. And I've been able to do it. Knock on wood, I'll be able to continue. But, I've been able to do that. And that's a beautiful way to really feel very close to our ancestors and to walk those ancestral lands, to stand where they stood, to look out at the sea in the same way they did.
Yeah.
And there's really nothing like that, as far as feeling that kind of connection. And you're really drawing and reinforcing those lines and making those traditions and those connections much, much stronger.